All right, Professor Project Team, Brent Fikowski here. Big week of training. We had the deload week, the restorative week, and now we are back into things May 8th to May 14th. Changing the template up a little bit here for the next few weeks, and then another restorative week. So I find these first weeks with a little bit of a new cycle, sometimes the sessions take a little longer, just sort of setting things up and figuring out what weights you need to use. Especially for the upper body sessions, the leg sessions are pretty similar. You have a pretty good idea of what you're going to need to do for the cleans, snatches, squats, deadlifts, that sort of thing. But for the upper body sessions, generally same kind of template, where we have the upper body sessions, the lower body sessions, the cardio sessions kind of in the morning, and you've got the CrossFit workouts in the afternoon. But I just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing the upper body sessions. It's going to take a little longer this week to set up, maybe a few more working sets to find that working weight. So don't be afraid to take one or two more warm-up sets to find that weight that's just right. That might add up to, a little more time, a few more actual total repetitions in the session, and that's okay. The upper body stuff. So last time we were doing a little more high rep, kind of working on a little more speed, a little more muscle endurance for the handstand push-ups, for the strict chest to bars, strict pull-ups banded. Now we're going with a little more tempo work, building a little more strength, so a little more, slower in the eccentric kind of thing. So remember, whenever anything is written at tempo, it's at number. And the first number is always the eccentric. Second number is the pause, change direction. Third number is the concentric, so the work against gravity, the work where you're actually pressing or you're actually pulling. And so that doesn't necessarily mean, if you've got something like a deadlift, the first number is actually the third thing you do. Because the first thing you do in a deadlift is you start with the concentric and then you go to the eccentric. Whereas something like a squat, you're starting with the eccentric. And then you're, because you have the bar here, you descend. Anyway, just keep that in mind. So usually if I'm ever forgetting, I think like tempo squats, and I think, what would this be if this was a squat? And so the first number is the lower, second number is the pause at the bottom, third number is the up, fourth number is the pause at the top, and then you just kind of switch that for whatever movement you're doing. So yeah, a little more tempo work here, kind of building that base of strength, and then we're going to go back to the high rep stuff in the next block, so the next like kind of 4 or 5 week block there. We'll go back to, the 5 sets of 15 strict pull-ups, or the 5 sets of 10 like strict handstand push-ups into, dumbbell strict press kind of thing. So, but we're going to do a little bit more tempo work. That all that high rep stuff can burn out the shoulders a bit. And also the reason we're doing that is there's more CrossFit in this block as well. There's just more, kipping pull-ups, kind of more handstand push-ups, more dumbbell reps, all that sort of stuff. And so kind of using the strength session with the upper body is a little more of a strength maintenance, building some size, as opposed to just like high rep. It's like, well, we're doing high rep under fatigue in the workouts. So keep that in mind. And there are a lot of workouts. So kind of pick and choose here, which ones you're going to push the pace on and which ones you're going to be steady on. We do still have kind of the 2 steady pieces a week. Obviously the long aerobic piece on Wednesday morning, and then you've got the grinder on Saturday afternoon, and then you have the swimming session, which is also a little lower intensity if you're able to do that. But there's a lot of CrossFit workouts in here, and most of them we're building in rest. So it's work rest, which I like that format. It kind of gives you a little opportunity to catch your breath, and it allows you to perform the movements at usually like a higher frequency, a higher cycle speed, which is important. But keep in mind, kind of look through this week, like I talked about last week in the video. Know what your strengths and weaknesses are. Really hammer away at like, okay, what are the 3 or 4 big weaknesses? Is there like 1 or 2 gymnastics movements, a specific barbell movement, a specific mobility weakness? What are those like specific things? And then look at the program in advance and kind of like highlight those things and think, okay, how can I make sure that those things in this program, those things are being magnified, right? You want to make sure that, if it's handstand push-ups, right? Upper body pressing. You're looking through and you're saying, okay, where are the upper body pressing reps in here? How can I make sure that I'm maximizing those? Do I need to add in any more? Do I feel like that's enough? It's probably enough. And if it's lower body hinging, like, the power clean, the deadlift, going through and making sure that those things are a priority. And so then maybe in those workouts, you either hit the workouts that have those things, you hit those workouts a little harder, or you say, you know what, I'm going to hit it as hard as I can, but with the asterisk, with the caveat that I have to do those reps, absolutely perfectly. So maybe it actually slows me down just a little bit, and I'm okay with that. But kind of always like center back the decisions you're making to what are my goals, what are my weaknesses, what are the things keeping me away from those goals, and how can I kind of like make small adjustments to the program to make that make sense for me. So for example, we have there's a workout that was the single leg. Each week we're going to do like a single leg variation there, whether it's like a pistol or a lunge, a step up. And so this one was just 30 cal row into 50-foot overhead walking lunge, 4 rounds for time. So obviously, you could hammer that, right? You could drop the hammer and go really fast. There's a bunch of different ways you can attack that. And so in that instance, some stuff I've been working on with single leg, I started noticing some things in my lunges. And so I did 2 of those rounds, admittedly, with front rack walking lunge, and was just really focusing on making sure each leg felt the same. So I was moving a little slower. I took some more breaks. I was rowing pretty slow. And so that piece was almost like, zone 2.5 sort of thing. I wasn't going super hard there. I did the last 2 sets at overhead walking lunge, which are obviously a little harder, but I was really focusing on technique in that session because I was like, you know what? I went pretty hard on the AMRAP before that. I obviously did the long aerobic piece that morning. So I was like kind of feeling a little tired. I was like, I don't need to bury myself here. I don't need to get my heart rate up to 100%. Let's just, really focus on technique, get the work in, get the repetitions in, make sure my legs are feeling good, leading into kind of the rest day. And then, even better going into like the heavy barbell day, the day after that. So anyway, that's kind of like an example of, the decisions you want to be making and sort of strategically choosing those, ideally, somewhat ahead of time, or just going on feel based on how you feel that day. But just kind of like being okay with cycling through the intensity and making sure ideally that those things line up with your goals. Don't just choose to go less intense in the workouts that you're not as good at, and then you're like, oh, I'm really going to crush this one because this is like my jam, and then you're always kind of like putting the pedal to the metal in the workouts that are already kind of in your wheelhouse, so to speak. So I think it's important to kind of say like, oh, maybe this is more important that I push the pace here and find that limit in a workout that's maybe not as favorable for my skills, while of course still maintaining technique. So that's pretty much it. That's kind of all I want to talk about this week. Obviously, like I said last week, kind of really try to hone in on what are the big moving pieces, what are the big weaknesses that you want to make sure are going to be getting better in the next 4 weeks, in the next 4 months, in the next year, and making sure each week that those things are really being tackled. If you have to miss a session, if you have to tone something down, whatever that is, it's like, how can I make sure that those things are always making progress every single week, every single day, ideally. So if that's a mobility issue, making sure you're not doing something that's hampering that mobility. So maybe you find that, like my overhead mobility is not very good, my external rotation. So maybe that's reducing the number of bench press reps or burpees or ring muscle ups if that tightens up your pecs, right? Or if you do those reps, hey, as soon as I do those reps, I have to immediately do some bent over rows with dumbbells, just to kind of like strengthen the rear shoulder, kind of put that shoulder back in the right position. And then if that means maybe you have to miss something else because you're doing that, then that's okay. But making sure that you're not just trying to get through every single piece that's written on the page to the detriment of what you're actually trying to achieve. And what you're actually trying to achieve is to get better and to improve, the big weaknesses that you have. So keep those in mind. Enjoy the tempo work and the upper body stuff. That's what I wanted to touch on. And yeah, that's it. If you have any questions at all, Professor Project Team, you know where to find me. Take it easy.